Did you know there's an 80% chance that 90% of people who watch leverless reviews request a split layout? Of course you didn't, because I made up that statistic just now. But some of you guys asked for this, and as usual, Haute42 has delivered. This is the C16-S, and my guess is that the S stands for split. Yes, this is Haute42's first split layout controller. And if this button configuration looks familiar to you, you're not just imagining things. This looks very similar to the Mavicade Keeb Brawler, with the obvious differences being the build, the function row, and the inclusion of a center button on the C16-S. I don't own a Mavicade myself, so I can't do a full comparison, but it seems to me that if you want the Mavicade configuration at roughly half the price, then you should seriously consider this controller. I just want to thank Haute42 for sending this over to me for the purpose of this video. No money exchanged hands and all opinions on my own. So what makes the C16-S stand out, and why would you choose this over other leverless controllers like its sibling? If you haven't watched my C16 review yet, you can find the link on the screen right now, and in that video I go over the finer details of the C16. This is going to be very similar to that controller, with two key differences. The first one is the split layout. The reason it is one of the most requested features for these types of controllers is simply because some players find it more comfortable to have their hands spaced out further from each other. It also opens up new possibilities for your non-jumping thumb. You see, on most controllers like this, you'll have one big jump button and two smaller peripheral buttons next to them. With a split layout, we now have two large jump buttons, so regardless of spacing and hand position, the jump button should feel equally accessible on both hands. And you now have access to 4 buttons with the thumbs. That's 2 each instead of just 3 in total. Which brings me to the second standout feature, the button configuration. If you're new to leverless controllers, this might look a bit daunting, but we're going to break it down. First, let's ignore everything except these 3 green buttons. These are our movement buttons, so we have left, down and right for going back and forward, blocking and Hadoukens, etc. Now this next set, these blue ones are our action buttons, and this is what we press when we want to punch and kick. These 2 beans on the bottom, as mentioned earlier, are the jump or up buttons. You can have either or both buttons as jump, and whether that is tournament legal or not is down to whatever tournament you're attending. But for most people playing online or in locals with friends, it doesn't really matter. Do ask your tournament official about the rules if you're a pro. Okay, now we can get onto the peripheral buttons. These are all nearby to our main clusters and accessed in different ways, and you can pretty much bind whatever you want to them, either in a GP2040 web configurator or within the games themselves. We've got left bumper and left trigger buttons here, these purple ones. So if you're hovering over your jump buttons, you just need to tuck your thumb in and hit these with the joint. We have the LS and RS buttons. On a normal DualSense, these would be the buttons you access by clicking in the analog sticks. Now they are accessible with our pinkies. I have never used my left pinky, but I know some of you freaky fellas like it. However, this one, the right pinky, is very important to me. This is where I would put my drive impact button or anything I want to access as quickly as possible. And I don't even press this properly, I just stiffen my finger to slap it. It's very hard to miss now that it's so big, just like your mum. Finally, we have this center button, and this is a first for Haute42. You won't find this on any of their other controllers. They've moved a button that usually would be here to the middle. In my opinion, this makes it much easier to reach, and because it's in the center, you can use either index finger to hit it. I'm sure someone out there will find a good home for this button. For example, it might be good for Tekken players and the wacky movement techniques you guys like to do. Overall, this configuration is designed to minimize hand movement. You wouldn't have to stretch too far from the home position to reach any of the face buttons. If you're the kind of player that has a use case for anything more than the basic 10 buttons, this will be a boon for you. During my play sessions with the C16-S, I found that the peripheral button next to the right jump button interfered a bit too much with my playstyle. For context, I like to use my thumb for light kick and medium kick when I need to press a column of attack buttons. The position of this one makes it difficult to do that cleanly, so my recommendation is to make use of these peripheral buttons for your combination bindings. After all, that's why you'd buy a 16 button controller in the first place, right? Put 2 lights here perhaps and 2 mediums here. Avoid pressing these with your thumb. Now I did notice a few things that you might want to be aware of. The bean buttons are ever so slightly higher than the other ones, maybe about a millimeter or so. Whether that is by accident or design, I can't say for sure, but you can probably decide for yourself if something like that would bother you. I suspect that in real world play, most people won't feel it at all. Also, the center button is not perfectly aligned with the screen. This is just an aesthetic blip and obviously won't affect gameplay. And the good news is that it's aligned with the button cluster very well. So it's not something most of you out there need to worry about. It's just something I have to mention for my OCD bros. So those are the two big features you need to be aware of and the main reasons why you might want to choose this over any other Haute42. As usual, this Haute42 runs on a GP2040 software. It's compatible with pretty much every modern console and gaming device like the Switch 1 and 2, PC, Mac and Android. For PS5 and Series X, you will need to buy a dongle that slots into the EXT port. So add £30 to £50 to your budget if you have one of those consoles. I recommend the Booter5 for PS5 because it has a super tiny profile. Right now, I'm using it on a MacBook that's connected to the Z1FC. This is a 16.1-inch portable monitor by Arzopa. It has a 144Hz 1080p 1 millisecond IPS panel at just 9mm thick and 780 grams in weight. There's a robust kickstand around the back and it can even go into tape mode for your shmups and pinball games. So it's a superb little option for gaming and you can carry this in pretty much any backpack as a portable solution. If productivity is more of your thing, check out the Z1RC. This one is a 60Hz 2.5K 3 millisecond panel, so it's still decent for gaming, but it's more suited for those who need the clarity for work-related purposes. You can grab the Z1RC, Z1FC, the C16-S or Booter5 on AliExpress via my links below. And don't forget to join my Cashback team for some extra bonuses. As well as being highly compatible, the C16-S is also easily configurable with the web-based configurator. You can access plenty of options and pretty much bind any key into any position. The C16-S has a RGB light switch and tournament lock in the function row, and a big feature of this controller is the easy access to art modding. It comes as standard with their new frosted acrylic art panel, which I prefer over the fully transparent one, and to release this we only need to press a button on the back and pry the panel away. No faffing about with screws and screwdrivers. Haute42 has packaged a cool selection of inserts for you to choose from, but if you're artistically skilled you might want to use the blank ones to draw or paint something of your own. If you prefer the feeling of an aluminium top panel, these are already available to buy and will add about 100 grams to the overall weight of the controller. Beyond the easy art mods, there are a few other options for physical customization. The middle button cap is 25mm and the main button caps are 23.5mm. You should be able to find plenty of replacements for these, including Haute42's own branded ones. Currently, no replacements for the bean caps exist, but I wouldn't rule it out for some point in the future. You can use something flat or a keycap puller like this to remove them. Lifting the panel off will make them easier to reach. It comes standard with wind engine switches. These feel and sound creamy and I really like them. But as usual, I will always choose Haute42's shadow hunting switches because I prefer the shorter travel. It just seems like my timing is better with these. The C16-S comes packaged with a switch puller. Grip the switches tightly and pull. You might be wondering which one is best for you between the C16 and C16S. There are a few changes, some definitely good, and others are a matter of preference. First up, during my review of the C16, I noticed that the lighting on the function panel didn't go far enough to the edges, so the logo and text on the extremes faded off. I'm pleasantly surprised and happy to say it looks better than it did before, and as a result, the panel looks more legit. I don't know if the later production models of the C16 still have the old faded lights, as they now come with the frosted acrylic panel as default instead of the old transparent ones, so things have definitely changed in some places. Shout out to Blog D for sourcing that information. Another change with the 16S is the selection of art. We have a couple of different looks here now, and even the plain white ones have changed because these have the labeling on them. Speaking of labeling, that is no longer a thing on the base layer. There is this logo sticker here that doesn't add much. In fact, it's a bit wonky, but I suspect Haute42 removed the labeling so people can have a truly plain backdrop as an option by just peeling this off. Now to see your art, you're going to be using the frosted acrylic panel. On first glance, they seem the same, but these new ones actually have a marginally smoother finish. I happen to have an opinion on this one because I prefer the grainier feel of the standard models panel, but that's just my personal preference and I'm sure some of you out there would disagree. Finally, the palm rest on the S model is slightly grainier. It's weird because they've made one with a grainy panel and smooth palm rest, and the other with a smoother panel and a grainy palm rest. You can feel the micro patterns on the S slightly more. It's marginal at best, subtle but noticeable, and I'm not even sure if it's intentional. It could just be production inconsistency in both cases. So those are the less obvious changes. If you've put any skill points into perception, you'd have already noticed that clearly there's a notable difference in the configuration of the peripheral buttons. This is the C16 panel on top of the S for reference. Because we don't have the M1 and M2 buttons up here anymore, you can see things have shifted up slightly on the S. That means we have a bit more space on the bottom for our palms. It's not much difference, and I didn't have a problem with the palm space on the original C16, but it might be preferable to some players out there. The spacing between the buttons is now slightly tighter. It's just millimeters of difference, but I always prefer things tight for my 7.5-inch hands. And it's much clearer to see the distance between the two main clusters now. There's almost a 1.5-inch gap here. On a dual-pad Zen, which is a brilliant split layout leverless option, the gap is 1 inch, and on a C16, it's less than half an inch. Everything else is pretty much the same. We have the same body, the brilliant function row, and the easy release panels. Now let's take another look at the dual-pad Zen. This one is an acrylic stack controller. You can see all the layers exposed here. The Zen goes in hard on ergonomics, so along with the split layout, the buttons are also angled to accommodate the natural angle of approach. It has a little joystick thingy here that allows access to an options menu on the screen, so settings can be changed on the fly, which is super helpful. Both controllers come with great low profile stock switches, so you don't need to swap those out unless you have very specific tastes. And finally, if you want to art mod this, you do have to unscrew and put it back together again, which isn't too bad if you only intend to do this once, but if you're quite fickle, then the C16 models have a definite advantage because of the easy release system. For a split layout on a budget, I think you'd be happy going for either of these. You can go for the Zen if you like the angles, or the C series if you prefer the build and button configuration. So, before we close out, let's go through some pros and cons. For the pros, it's modeled after the C16, which has a bunch of great features. I'd argue that the C16 is a culmination of Haute42's best ideas, so to use that controller as a base is a good choice. It's priced in the budget range, so to get this amount of controller for under £70 makes it easier for people to try their hand at a split layout. Also, the new positioning for the peripheral buttons make them easier to access if your playstyle can incorporate them. For the cons, the new positioning of the peripherals also have a downside. It can get in the way if you're big on using your right thumb for the action buttons. Second con, the new frosted panel isn't as good as the previous one in my opinion. I thought they released these to solve the fingerprint issues, but as it is now, this C16S version takes the worst properties from the clear panel, being a fingerprint magnet, and the frosted panel, not being able to see your art clearly. It's easy for Haute42 to fix. They just need to repeat the manufacturing process they used for the C16 frosted panels here, and possibly release a clear panel for the C16S, and then let the customer choose their own poison. If there's one thing that Haute42 are clearly good at, it's the ability to give us budget options for tried and tested principles. This isn't a one-for-one of the Mavicade Keep Roller, but under the hood, they will have the same capabilities as they're both GP2040 controllers. I've never tried the Mavicade myself, but I've heard it's good quality, and just from eyeballing the two, Haute42 has given us something very close with a respectable level of quality as well. If you've been waiting for a split layout before getting into bed with the Haute42 brand, here it is. Thanks for joining me for today's video. If you're into arcade controllers or gaming stuff in general, hit the subscribe button or give the video a hype and a like. It helps the channel massively. Don't forget to use my links below if the C16S looks like the one for you, and I'll see you in the next one.